Be honest, besties, I have a little bit of a sore throat. I'm hoping it's just allergies or a little bit of a cold. So this is my May wrap up, everything I read in May, but I'm gonna be doing the quickest reviews I can because my throat is just sore. Just like all my other wrap up videos, I'm gonna be breaking this up by category / genre. And the first category we're gonna talk about is rereads. Also, forgive the angle. I really couldn't be bothered to set up my whole setup. So I'm just sitting in my desk chair, and you're propped up on a bookcase. We're not feeling great, so we're just gonna try and get through this. So I reread Fire by Christian Crashore, a YA fantasy to help me fall asleep, and I adore this so much. 5 out of 5 stars. I also reread The Intimacy Experiment by Rosie Danan and Tabbed, and originally when I read this I gave it 5 stars, and upon reread I think this is more like a 4 stars. Still a solid read, but not quite as cute and charming as I recall upon my initial read. I also reread Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell. I love this. I adore this. This was so comforting to revisit, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Really quickly, in the horror genre, I will mention my comic book reading experience, Eat the Rich by Sarah Gailey. I have a whole review up for this on my channel. I'm pretty emotionally attached to this little comic book, and I gave it 5 stars. Check out that review if you want to see further thoughts and feelings. Next, we're doing sci-fi. The first book we're going to talk about is Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is a sci-fi multi-point of view epic sci-fantasy story about this character named Idris, and he is a genetically modified person, specifically engineered to combat these giant space creatures who have the ability to like rip apart planets with the power of their minds, so he can like communicate with them. And there's a big war going on, and there's a conspiracy happening. This is a very epic sci-fi story, and I ended up excuse me, my voice. I ended up giving it 3 stars because all of the characters I grew attached to were killed off, and the main characters that I was supposed to root for, I just felt very mediocre things about them. I don't know if I will continue the series, but there you go. I loved Adrian Tchaikovsky's other works. Children of Time was one of my favorite sci-fi books ever, but this one just didn't quite work for me. It was just okay. Next, we have How High We Go in the Dark. I did manage to finish this, and I gave this 4 stars. Really emotionally hard-hitting, slow-paced slice of life sci-fi about a plague. So be careful going into this. It's super emotional and hard-hitting. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really liked it. I bawled my eyes out, and it does have a fun twist at the end. So if you can handle the emotional journey of this story, I think the payoff is quite worth it. My poor voice. And it's told in a vignette style, and I would classify this as an odd story. So be prepared for some weirdness as well. Next, we'll go to fantasy. And the first fantasy I'm going to talk about is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. This is a Jewish/Hungarian inspired fantasy standalone, adult fantasy standalone, and it also has an element of enemies to lovers, where our main character is from basically a tribe of witches, magicians, magic users, and she gets kind of sacrificed to the woodsman to appease the king, and politics ensue. The mythology and the world building were the elements I really enjoyed in this story, but overall I didn't really enjoy the romance, which is a big theme in this book, and the plot in general had some repetitiveness to it. We literally go on the same quest twice, which I found a little bit boring, so I ended up giving this 3 stars. With a 3.5 star rating, we've got The Jasmine Throne by Tasha Shuri. This is my 3rd book by the author, and again, a 3.5 stars. I did enjoy this. I think I will continue with the series. This is a sapphic high fantasy story about the princess of the emperor who is being banished, and basically her handmaiden servant who end up forming a romance, as well as attempting to overthrow the empire. So there's rebellion, there's politics, lots going on. The one thing I will say I didn't quite enjoy about this was I found the end incredibly predictable, and it was so obvious to me that it bothered me that the characters didn't figure it out for themselves. So overall, a really good story, just a few things that didn't quite work for me. So 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I will continue because we love sapphic high fantasy in this house. My favorite fantasy novel I read, which was also sapphic fantasy, was The Traitor Baru Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. This is wild. This is an absolutely wild book. I read it like one sitting. This is about a woman named Baru Cormorant who, when she was a child, her island nation was colonized by the Empire of the Mask, the Masquerade Empire. And so she decides not only to get revenge, but to get revenge from the inside. So she plays along with the Empire and goes to an Empire school to get really high up within the Empire to destroy it from within. So this is a revenge tale. And I don't want to spoil it, but holy crap, this took me places that I did not expect it to go. There are no fantasy elements in terms of like magic, but it is a fantasy story in that it is set in a mystical, like otherworldly realm. Like it's not set in our world. It is a completely made up world, but I haven't come across any magic or mythological creatures in it. I gave this a 4.5 stars. This was, again, wild, and I will be continuing. This is going to be a quartet, and the first 3 books are out, and the 4th is coming out within the year. So I really like this. If you love supporting women's wrongs, this is a great book. I really like this. 4.5 out of 5 stars. Before my poor throat gives up, we're gonna quickly run through the romance books I read. At 3 stars, we have The Bookshop of Second Chances by Jackie Fraser. I go into detail about this book in my reading vlog, which I will link as well. This is more of a chick lit / literary fiction book about a woman kind of getting a new lease on life and starting over after a long marriage and divorce. So I kind of enjoyed my reading experience, but it wasn't quite for me, so I ended up giving this 3 stars. Next, we have Accidentally Engaged. Again, another book that I talk about in that vlog, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really like this one, and I highly recommend it if you like fake dating, Muslim, Indian, and African protagonist. You've got queer side characters, a little bit of a found family, and baking, and a baking competition. What more could you want? Then we have my absolute favorite reads of the month. We've got 2 left, which is The Duchess Deal by Tessa Dare. This is about a duke who has been heavily scarred from a mortar shell in the war, and so he is trying to find a wife, but he finds himself disgusting because of his scars, and so he ends up making a deal with the seamstress who was supposed to be sewing the wedding dress of his fiance, who ended up breaking up with him. So he strikes a deal with the seamstress, and it's basically a marriage of convenience. He's like, I need an heir, and you're available. Let's get married. And she eventually agrees. And I really loved the antics of this. I really loved the trope, the marriage of convenience in here. I really liked how these two connected and opened up to each other. It was emotional and steamy, and I quite enjoyed this, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Recommend me more Tessa Dare books. I really, really like this one. And my last and absolute favorite read of the month was A Lady for a Duke by Alexis Hall, which is a historical romance featuring a trans main character falling in love with her guy best friend. Now, these two friends were in each other's lives before our main character transitioned, so there is an element of dead naming in here, because the guy protagonist, the Duke, he's just talking about his friend who he thinks died in the war, when in fact she came back from the war living her true authentic self. So be aware of that, but this is one of the most loving, beautiful romances I've ever read. I sobbed. This has one of the most beautiful declarations of love scenes I've ever read, and this is the only friends to lovers book I have enjoyed. It doesn't have that scene where one character is trying to tell the other how they feel and they're not being believed. This was totally mutual and just really, really loving and accepting, and everything about this was fun. The subplots were great, the characters were great, the side characters were fun. There's queer side characters. It's just a really great, perfect romance for me. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. The one complaint I will say is it is a little overwritten. It's almost 500 pages, but if you are into like a slow burn love story, this is definitely for you. Anyway, those are all the books I read. I'm so sorry about my voice. So I'm gonna end it here. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you read in May, as I would love to know, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye.